Bappening.
Just,
It's Bappening. We're here. Charlie's here.
Well,
it's time. We're live. And, it's supposedly we're about to hear Joe Biden's VP announcement any minute, right? That's the word on the street. That's what CNN says. Joe Biden's VP announcement coming any minute. So we thought it was time to, take a quick look and see what are the realistic choices that Joe Biden has for a vice president at this point. And we've come up with a list. Some of these names you might be pretty familiar with. Some might come to you as a little bit of a surprise, but we'll tell you why. Stay tuned and we'll see what we get into in terms of this. But yeah. So, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments, whatever platform you're on. Thank you for tuning in. Feel free to leave a comment on Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, whatever, and we will post them on screen if they're funny or whatever, or they're interesting, or maybe if they're just infuriating enough. It depends on how we feel. So anyway, Charlie.
So who's our first VP pick, Charlie?
Charlie, do you want to kick us off with one of your top VP picks for Joe Biden?
Okay, a VP pick, top one. All right, let me think. Okay, hear me out on this one.
Okay.
So the Democrats know that the only way they're going to win is to bring the right wing back into the fold. Joe Biden needs a vice president who not only alienates the braying hordes of far-right Trump stans, but someone who's familiar and friendly to the wealthy, the never-Trump donors who are going to make or break this election for the Democrats. Someone they've probably done business with, who's going to run this country like the elite run the things that make them powerful and good people, which is why I'm submitting that we use what am I saying? I'm saying that Biden pick as his vice president the child trafficking manager of Wayfair, Rachel Chandler, someone the donors are familiar with.
Rachel Chandler. Yeah, I mean, the donors have been looking for a lot of reassurance from the DNC this cycle. This is somebody that a lot of their donors know well, have paid a lot of money to cover up scandals or to create new ones.
Listen, if you're going to run this country like a business, why not the most efficient and widespread business, the global pedophile elite?
Wow.
They already run everything anyway.
I think that's really pragmatic. I think it's a very pragmatic choice for Biden. I think it really fills out the ticket in an interesting way. And, she's a strong woman. We need more women traffickers.
This is off the rails already. I love this.
Ren, do you have a VP pick for us?
I do. Speaking of strong women, I think that definitely Joe Biden needs to pick a woman as his president in order to get a large part of the votes in this country. And I think he needs to be able to pick a strong, hardworking woman, someone who basically never leaves her job, is always there for you. And that is why I think that Joe Biden should pick Isabel Animal Crossing. She never leaves the resident services building, except on Sundays in August. And she's always willing to help you with any problem that you have. Joe Biden needs to be a partner with Isabel Animal Crossing, just like Tom Nook is. Clearly, that's the only choice.
All right. Okay.
Personally, I feel like that's a good choice because a good president understands how to delegate tasks. Joe Biden is going to be there moving our houses around, telling us where we can and can't live, putting down paths that are incredibly ugly.
Planting new flowers in our communities.
That's
Joe Biden
the job for Isabel Animal Crossing.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's really compelling. I mean, like you said, hardworking, definitely thrown more staplers than Klobuchar too, So if we're looking for somebody to replace Klobuchar after she was knocked out of contention, here you go. Maybe Isabel from Animal Crossing could be the pick for you. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
If there's one thing I know about Isabel Animal Crossing, it's that every morning, night, not any time of day that you need to know what's going on in the town, she's there with a full glass of bourbon on her desk.
All right. Well, I've got some picks.
Okay.
So I think this one is really realistic. I think that this, there's been a lot of talk of how do we bring in people to the left of Joe, right? Because like obviously, a lot of us are not, is super excited if you consider yourself a progressive or a leftist to vote for Joe Biden. So I think that this is an obvious VP pick that would bring in a lot of people from the left, make a lot of people, happy, and, might even get me to vote for him. And that's weed. Joe Biden's VP should be weed.
Just weed, all of it.
Weed for VP.
I'm very familiar with this potential vice president. This is
everyone's favorite pick.
This is
a household name with trust, right? A lot of people are concerned that the VP could be some kind of more corporate-y person that nobody even really knows. If the VP is weed, then you don't have to wonder who's my VP. Do I know this? Do I know this person?
Yeah,
no, it's weed. Weed.
That's a VP I'd sit down and have a beer with.
Right. A lot of you probably have had weed in your house, before. Like, you've probably sat down to dinner with weed or had,
And still securing the female vice president. We have Mary Jane as our vice president. Still securing that demographic, so we're all good.
We've got commenters coming in with the just supporting our would drink a beer with weed. All right. I got another one. Okay. I'm just gonna keep on a roll here. I think that another strong choice in terms of like we need a powerful woman. Obviously, like there's been a lot of talk of that. Maybe there'll be a few of these picks that aren't women, but I think overall, all these picks are going to trend that way, and everybody kind of knows why at this point. I don't need to rehash that. So here's my next pick for you all. I think that we really need somebody who is like as strong as it gets. Somebody who's not going to be afraid to like take the gloves off with foreign policy. Somebody who will just like burn everything down.
Interesting
literally, and that's why I think Daenerys Targaryen is my next logical choice. If Biden's not going to pick weed, I think this really is the one that makes sense to me. She's the mother of dragons. She has, many armies that support her already. And as I understand it, military recruitment's kind of down. So it just seems like there's a lot of reasons why Daenerys Targaryen, could be that strong VP pick that we need to kind of round out the Biden ticket, make it a little more progressive. What do you think?
Right. Well, and it's good because not only will she round it out to make it more progressive, she'll bring in those older Biden voters who are concerned that he's not going to be tough on crime anymore.
Right. Yeah, she's like, I'm gonna burn up criminals with a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty firm. That's tough on crime. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think we could even go like a step further, and my next VP pick. I think we can go a step further if you want to be tougher on crime. Someone tough on crime, good for foreign policy. Someone who is just not afraid to like go out there and hurt people. Someone like Joe Biden,
Wow.
like really.
That's
really
what I look for in
like,
a person.
Exactly, like Joe Biden, he kind of needs that. Like he had that before when he like was supporting all of these wars in the Middle East, and he's kind of losing it, so he kind of needs to kind of bring that back for himself. So I think that just all of the murder hornets should be his vice president, just all of them at the same time.
Oh,
okay, the murder hornets.
Finally, a candidate who knows a thing or two about climate change.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's now you're thinking outside the box here, and I like it. Also, I mean, murder hornets obviously are like not the most obvious choice, but definitely had a lot of news attention this year, right? Murder
Yeah,
Hornets
exactly.
been in the news, getting
So we got that
press.
name recognition. Like that's what Biden
Right,
needs.
right.
Exactly. So
I mean, nothing, and as a presidential look, nothing says presidential like being covered in a swarm of hornets that are not stinging you. Nothing says I have command.
exactly.
I mean,
As
I would
the
be
commander-in-chief.
impressed to see that. Yeah. um, Charlie, I think you had another one.
I
that
do.
You
I
were
haven't.
mentioning.
Yes. Okay. The other one. So let me pitch this one to you. God, could Joe Biden's dad pilot a car? Like father, like son, Joe needs the charismatic running mate that evokes the spirit of America's glory days while also keeping us firmly oriented toward the future. Joe needs a sturdy, well-built running mate who can haul this country back to greatness. A running mate who, like the greatest empire in human history, it is questionable whether or not there's a brake pedal. And that's why I think we should have the Cybertruck. Yeah.
Cybertruck.
What a car.
VP. Ooh, I like where this is going.
You really need a running mate who Joe Biden could get inside and pilot to something much more than either of them could achieve alone.
A running mate that runs reliably, some would say.
Yeah.
What do y'all think? Cybertruck as Joe's VP?
I think Cybertruck is perfect. I mean, you know, it's new, like Charlie said, it's for the future, sturdy built, but also there's no side mirrors because Joe doesn't need to know what's behind him. He only needs to know what's in front of him.
And you know what
so
else?
deep and powerful. I'm really
And here's the thing though is there are a lot of great cars out there that Joe could pick as his running mate. But when it comes down to it, the Constitution says the vice president has to be manufactured in the USA. So,
yeah, I mean, you can't have a Honda Civic vice president.
No, absolutely.
Sorry.
No.
You might feel like that's an all-American car, but it's not.
A House of Representatives candidate if it can really like assimilate well.
And you definitely can't have some, you know, soy latte Toyota Prius as your vice president. No.
Okay. So cars are a great idea, but hear me out.
Okay.
I started a petition. And as of right now, it has 74 signs.
Whoa.
Yeah, 74 people have signed this. I'm
That's
going to go ahead and just
lot.
drop this link right here for everybody to sign. It's going to go out to everybody right now. Okay, it's in there. We all got it. So
this is bad, Rachel.
2016 was a gross miscarriage of justice. Hillary Clinton did not get what she deserved, which was to be president of the United States. And as a feminist, I am forced to insist that Joe Biden pick Hillary Clinton as his running mate. Hear me out. This is our last real chance to defeat misogyny, to defeat the patriarchal machine, and it only happens if Joe Biden specifically picks Hillary Rodham Clinton for president.
Yeah, I like what I'm hearing here. I mean, I think that, like, you know, repeating the mistakes of the past is a great way to move forward.
We love to do it. Listen. I understand, not only do I understand the needs of women and the needs of the American people, but I understand the needs of the DNC. And the DNC physically needs to keep making the same mistake over and over again. And that does include making Hillary Clinton Joe Biden's vice presidential pick.
Oh, and you know what I like about this is since we all know that Joe Biden is already dead and is a hologram who is simply hobbling to the White House, whoever we pick becomes the president when they reveal his death after his election.
Exactly.
Right.
And there's no other way this is going down.
So, so please sign my petition at change.org. It is titled Feminists Who Want Biden Clinton 2020. And if we get it to 1,000 signatures, I'll be really excited because really fucking ridiculous, and no one should do that.
You know, is it still the case that if we get enough signatures, Trump has to look at it?
Oh, maybe.
I think that's for official
feel
White House
like-
petitions.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
I was hoping.
Mm.
That's a news day I want.
You know, maybe Trump will throw a fucking wild card, and she will actually be his vice presidential pick.
Oh,
You know,
I like
it's a
that.
real-
Actually.
it's a
That's
unity
even better.
ticket. It's a unity ticket.
It's a unity ticket.
No, this
Mhm.
is good. We're gonna do we're already doing the previous century over point by point with every single thing. So the next thing that has to happen is a total inversion of the parties, in
Mhm.
which both of them are competing for the center, right versus left of either side, and then we'll get back to the way things were.
Hell yeah.
That's what Joe's all about.
Return
Getting
to
back to the
normal.
way things were.
We will free our child slaves overseas.
What, free them?
Yeah, well,
We need
we
them
will-
to go back to work if we want things to go back to the way that they were.
Well, no, we're going to replace them with different child slaves.
Oh,
We're going to pick like a different ethnicity that we want to just use until it is completely genocided.
We're going
makes
to
sense to
replace all of the slave labor with drones who are piloted by slaves somewhere else.
Yes, exactly. We're going to do the same thing we've always done when we're in the United States, pretending that we don't do slaves, is we're just going to put it somewhere that nobody is looking. And that's
Right.
really the important part, is that we take the slave labor we're using and we bury it in the sand.
Okay, all right.
Bury it in the sand ticket. I see. Okay.
Bury
Yeah,
it in the
bury
sand
it all in the
ticket,
sand ticket.
2020.
Trump Clinton 2020, bury it in the sand.
Right.
I don't know what's happening anymore. I'm
Joe-
not.
Kennedy,
is
do you
not
have
okay.
another
Happening
VP?
is-
This is not okay.
Joe
Okay.
Biden, all that is
Disco.
something turns into dust.
You know, so a
Yeah.
lot of people want. I got another one because a lot of people. This is a little bit out there because it's not a woman, so I know that'll be a little controversial. But
Boo.
Mm,
this comes from a different perspective, which is again, this is another VP pick that's about bringing in the left. It's
Okay.
about bringing in the progressives, right? And it's also about okay. So here's an important thing. One of the concerns a lot of people have had about a lot of like potential progressive VP picks is that there aren't a lot of progressives in government, and if you take a good progressive out of like another position so that they can be VP, that could be potentially damaging, right? So like taking Bernie or Warren out of the Senate, right? That's people have concerns about that. You know what I mean? Or like taking a lot of these people out of Congress that could potentially, you know, whether it's Rashida Tlaib or, you know, some, you know, any of these people that, you know, it's like that we need this person in their office doing what they're doing. So I thought, okay, who's a well-known progressive that needs a job and that everybody, you know, like would be okay with probably and would bring in the left and you know all of that. And I thought, of course, Evo Morales,
Brilliant. Absolutely.
right? Like he's not
Yeah.
doing anything right now.
You know, he does need to be born in the United States. So they will have to forge a birth certificate.
but they've done that before.
Yeah, I mean, they did it with Obama. They can do it with
Right.
him too. It's fine.
It's easy,
fine.
obviously. So you know, we'll just make Evo Morales a American birth certificate.
Mhm.
And you know, because that's what we Democrats do, and we will make it happen, and it'll bring in the left. Think about it; it's perfect. Also, it's Kamala officially. Yes, we've also been watching the feed, waiting for this moment. We knew it would probably come while we were like shit posting, and we were just gonna hold out as long as we could with the shit posts until the horrible revelation of who it would be. And of course, it's Kamala Harris because Joe Biden is tone deaf. And cannot no, you're good. We appreciate you chiming in. We're just saying we knew it was coming, that like this announcement was probably coming during the stream.
And frankly, we
and
knew it
it's
was going to be
horrible.
Kamala because,
I-
like, of course.
Yeah, it seemed pretty obvious for a while.
Just at any point,
it-
pick like the worst thing he could do, and he'll do that.
I
So in
mean,
this case, he picked a cop.
there's nothing that could be more tone deaf right now. You know, like
Yeah,
Just in
Kamala,
terms
I
of,
lost
like-
my own state, Harris.
I genuinely feel sad in my gut. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
See,
God,
I
is
feel
that it?
nothing anymore.
I actually don't. Yeah, I feel
I haven't
nothing.
felt anything
I
about
don't feel
electoral
anything.
politics since Super
This
Tuesday.
is why
It's
I'm
great.
shocked. I'm shocked I'm feeling anything. I'm shocked I'm feeling
Yeah,
like,
wow.
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
this. Huh.
Yeah, whatever
Fuck
nerve
me.
endings I had left were completely burned off of my body on Super Tuesday, and I feel nothing anymore, and I don't believe in electoralism anymore, and it's great. I'm
No, I mean, that's
way more
definitely true.
peaceful.
Yeah, no, electoralism doesn't do anything. In fact, the last time anything in the White House made any significant change was when the British tried to burn it down.
We should do that
This
again.
is true.
Burning things down apparently is the only
In
thing that affects
Minecraft.
change anymore.
This is a satire show. Don't actually
We're
burn
gonna-
down the White House.
We're gonna burn it down in
Yeah.
Minecraft.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it
That
was
is-
my
that's all
John's
true.
birthday recently, and there's a Minecraft pack called Millionaire Mansions, and it is exactly what it sounds like.
Oh.
Yeah, and so for John's birthday, my daughter and I spun up a new version of Millionaire Mansions and completely laced the entire just build with TNT. And John's birthday present was literally blowing it off the face of the earth, and it was pretty
Incredible.
satisfying. Actually. There's a
Incredible.
video of
That's
him
so good.
giggling wildly while he's watching it happen. So
Honestly, by the standards of COVID celebration,
That's happy.
that's
Yeah.
pretty
amazing.
good.
That's
Yeah.
high
You know?
tier.
could do worse.
That's very high tier.
Yeah. That is using the virtual world we now live in to its best.
hmm
Oh God, it's Kamala.
Why?
Right.
Just cool.
I mean, I know why, right?
I mean, I know why too, but also fuck me, come on. Like the
Yeah.
person who built prisons and the person who loved filling them. Cool.
Yeah.
yeah.
This is why.
Well, and I
this
mean, I
is
think they're
why
making
when
some-
people try to convince me that we should think about voting for Joe, this kind of shit is why I'm so unconvinced of any kind of people are like, this is going it's either Joe or outright fascism. Joe Biden is looking like outright fascism to me, folks. Maybe
Yeah.
y'all have a different perspective, and that's great if you do. I don't. I'm poor and gay, and I'm scared of either of these fucking presidents. And fucking, I don't know what to say to the people that are trying to convince me that this is somehow going to be okay under Joe Biden and that we're not sliding into fascism. He says he's funding law enforcement more, including ICE and CBP
Yeah.
and DHS, all of the worst organizations. He's giving them all more money, and now he says his VP is the cop, Kamala, who laughs while talking about fucking sending kids to school, to prison for truancy and shit. That's the situation that we're looking at. So
I've seen his campaign ads at this point. He only has two. One which is I think Chapo described it as the end of Soylent Green, where you're just watching America's past as you slowly fade into oblivion as nostalgia. And the other half is literally saying those communists in the streets, those are because of Trump, because Trump is actually communism. And I don't know. I'm at the point where I'm I literally, the other day, I heard people outside my window discussing socialism, and the line was, no, Republicans saying, we're going to do socialism, they're going to kill you, and then, Democrats saying, no, socialism is when you build the wall. We're not doing that. You don't get it. And I'm just we're not in a good place. We are not in
No.
a good place.
I mean, I honestly believe no matter who wins, there's going to be open warfare in November.
I think
and that's
so.
one
I
of those
think
things
the-
that
I
falls
think
under
the
that. I
only-
really
this
hope
is
I'm
the
wrong, but
Yeah.
I think the best case scenario question is, are we going to war with ourselves or are we going to war with another country? Because Joe Biden might forestall the civil war, but we know a fucking Biden-Harris ticket is going to be taking us into wars with either the Middle East or South America immediately.
Yeah.
There is going to be no hesitation. There's going to be none of this dancing around the issue the way that Trump does. And so this is one of the things that kind of honestly pisses me off when I have this conversation with people, because a lot of people seem willing to just push off the idea of this conflict onto imperialism and say that that's better. I would honestly rather
No.
deal with the fascism at home in some ways and not just fuck over the world like we've been doing for fucking ever. That sucks.
I mean, yeah.
I
If you're
don't
really
know why
talking
that's
about
acceptable.
if you're really talking about doing the least harm, then you want to elect the person who's least likely to just bomb people overseas. And the truth is, we're in a situation now where it doesn't fucking matter. Neither of the candidates are different enough for it to fucking matter.
Right. Do we want
It
some?
may be marginally easier to protest under Biden, or he might be less likely to start shooting us. But I think if he does, people are a lot more likely to think it was the right thing to do. You know,
I mean-
and I feel like these sort of cults of personality, both for and against Donald Trump, have completely stripped people of their reasoning skills, of their curiosity about why we got here. It's just this giant glaring light that has blinded everyone to anything else. And it's
I just wanna
exhausting and
point out, while we're
frustrating
talking
and
about
probably only going to get worse. Go ahead, Kennedy.
I want to point out while we're talking about this, because I've been having to clarify this for a lot of people this week, and I could cite my sources if you need me to. If you're in chat, you don't believe me, I'll cite my sources, no problem. Joe Biden lied about not doing family separation. They were already doing that under Obama. Joe Biden lied about not building the cages. They were all built under Obama. Also, the original pictures that upset us so much about like these kids in cages were taken in 2014, and famously Trump was able to use this as an attack against the Democrats, because we were spreading around these 2014 pictures saying, look at what Trump's doing, look at what Trump's doing, look at what Trump's doing. And these were all things that had been done under Obama. So here's the thing. When people say Trump is fascism and Biden is not, I don't buy it. I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
But see, Trump is more fascism.
We have been is he?
Well,
is he?
No, I think they're the same.
Oh.
I think Trump is uglier and
that's
has
exactly
like he's uglier, but I don't know that like materially the impact is that different.
Well, it's hard to know, because in the sense that like where Joe Biden will have access to the secret police force that Trump has. Joe Biden wants to fund it. Joe Biden will have a supportive Congress. He's going to use, exactly. Like, he's already putting ads on the TV saying we're going to crush communists and socialists, like literally, and anarchists. I mean, I think he's saying not communists and anarchists, but like whatever. What comes next? Like, I'm pretty sure that quote starts with "first they came for the communists" or some shit. Like, and I don't want to pretend like I just don't know, because this is simultaneously like we can learn so much by just looking at what's happening and what's happened in history already to know what's going to happen here. And also, this is so different. This is so unlike anything we've ever experienced in human history at its like sort of complex maximum. At its core, it's like, well, there's a secret police force. Both presidents like it. All the people in charge are either cops or former cops. We live in a cop country now. If we did, I mean, we already did, but like, yeah, we already did. I don't know what I can say. This is the trick, is every time I can say, well, now we're here, it's like, no, we were already there. It's just going to affect more people now. It's just, I don't see how either of these people isn't going to continue brutalizing the people who have already been brutalized and expanding the categories of who is to be brutalized. That's, I think, the trick I'm looking at, is both of these people might expand that to different groups. I think Trump is going to expand it to less white people. I think Biden is going to expand it more ideologically. Neither of these seems like a good choice, and I don't feel good voting for either of, like, I wouldn't vote for Trump in the fucking first place, but even to have entertained for a second, is it worth it to vote for Biden? The answer I keep coming to is a resounding no, because not only would it be cool if there was a third party candidate that was actually given some sort of legitimacy for the first fucking time, which would be really nice, because, you know, I also hate electoralism with a fiery passion, which is like part of why I did it. I also want everyone who hates it to do it, because like it's good triage if you can succeed, and it's where the power is to take it over. But also, like, then you get candidates who are willing to like protest and wreck stuff, and that's good.
I feel you. I was looking for a strong leftist choice like the Murder Hornets.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! This sucks so bad. I mean, I knew it was gonna be bad, but this just feels like the perfect like things falling into like the worst possible order in terms of like Joe Biden was like basically the worst candidate. And I know whenever I say that, people will always kind of jump in. What about Bloomberg? I feel like Bloomberg ran to make Biden palatable, and I will talk more about this probably. So I'm not even gonna take him seriously. But in terms of like the actual realistic candidates, Biden was the worst one in my opinion. And now, in terms of like who his VP picks were, Kamala was definitely among the worst. She was probably the worst Democrat that he could have picked, in my opinion. Obviously, like he was floating like the idea of picking a Republican or something, and so I'm not going to say she's worse than some of the crazy people that were floated around that are like Republican knuckleheads,
also,
like
Biden,
crazy.
they were
Kissinger, 2020.
But
Right.
they were floated to make Kamala more palatable. Like they do that.
Right. Mhm.
Mhm.
But yeah, in terms of like Democrats that he could have picked, she's among the very worst choices that were floated as actual possibilities. Not in terms of like there's other worse Democrats, but in terms of real possibilities, right? Who the names that were floated around, she's among the worst of the worst. So it's just like now we have a ticket of two complete terrible candidates that are not going to appeal to large swaths of people who have
Right.
very questionable records that people do not like. All of your informed voters are going to hate this ticket,
Yep.
period. Like a lot of them might hold their nose and say, I got to do it. But your informed voters are going to hate this ticket. Nobody wanted this. Nobody wanted Harris. Nobody wanted Biden. Except for like a bunch of old white rich boomers who got together and like forced
The
it
only
down
people
everyone's
whose
throats.
opinions matter. The only people in the entire country that anybody that has any influence on policy. Yeah. But you know what? It's great. I feel nothing. I feel absolutely nothing. I am numbed.
Well,
We're glad to be here, Genderqueer Jack, because we need to yell, and it's great to have other people out there sending in the comments and yelling with us. This is just so frustrating. I also felt like Kamala was like, it was the field was narrowing down to most likely her. And then especially the announcement right before our show went live that Karen Bass was definitely out. I was like, if Karen Bass is out, who does that leave?
Yeah. I don't think it is like, I don't think it's fair to say it's just an identity politics pick, though. I think, you know, obviously they were specifically looking for a Black woman because they wanted to make the identity statement, right? But Kamala's a really compatible choice with Biden because she's a fucking liar and a cop and a fascist, and because she will completely go along with all of the things. Like, you know, she came out in the debates at first saying like Medicare for all is important, and 5 minutes later it was like, you need to let go of Medicare for all, Kamala. And she was like, I'm gonna be VP now. And it's like, she's willing to compromise on all of her ideals. She only wants power. It's a perfect match.
She staked her entire campaign during the debates on yelling at Joe Biden.
Well, and
like,
well, they've made
like,
up.
am I supposed to believe that you really give a shit about all those fucking id pull things, cards that you were playing? Like,
I mean, I think the Democratic
hold on, I just want to
Party-
answer this for the audience real quick. We are on every platform under the sun. We are on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, whatever you want to call it, and YouTube. So wherever you want to watch us, whatever you prefer, it's all available. We are on Twitch at twitch.tv/notsafemedia. Gotta do the plugs. You know how it is. Rachel, go.
I think that was basically my point, honestly, just that she's willing to compromise all of her ideals and is totally evil, therefore is perfect.
Wait,
and also that the DNC, like, they have no understanding of optics, but they're really good with spreadsheets. So they think of people in terms of these like superficial check boxes, right? And I think in that capacity, like, they're creating like their ideal identity mix, but I still don't think Kamala would have gotten it if she wasn't evil, you know?
And
like, she's there on her merits.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, but I do want to say on the identity politics front, we should not underestimate the degree to which identity politics has been so hollowed out. Cops are an identity now, and that's like, I think, actually working. Like, I genuinely am taking that seriously as a significant change in the identity politics front, where they're talking about blue lives as though that's actually a thing, because you can be assigned cop at birth now, apparently. And I think that, ACAB. I think that that's actually something that's happened in a meaningful way to make not just a pick as a black woman, but a pick as a cop, a thing that's going to appeal to all of the comfortable people who are going to vote in this election, even though it's probably going to kill them, because
they want law and order, and they think that means, punitive reactions and
right.
criminal system.
We have to support the troops, and we have to support the blue lives, and do not clip out anything I just said.
At least, I mean, also it's like, a lot of liberals are still very on the fence about this abolish the police thing, right?
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are.
It's a thing where like a lot of them, and a lot of this ticket in general. Thank you for following Proto-Humanist, by the way. A lot of this ticket in general seems to have like been focused on fuck you progressives. They like to say that that's not the case, but Joe Biden literally made a shirt with socialism crossed out, which I will never forget ever. In terms of just like the, obviously it was a fuck you to people like me. And so this is a fuck you from the establishment as well, in my opinion. This is saying, hey, we'll play your id poll game, but also she's a cop.
Yeah, I think so.
It's because, like I say, a lot of liberals are still on the fence. Are these protests justified? To what extent are the protests justified? Blah blah. Right. If you're a real leftist, you say that the protests are justified, period, and you don't qualify it. But a lot of liberals are not in that place at all of thinking, and they're qualifying it still. And so Kamala's the perfect fucking fuck you choice to tell the progressives, we don't actually think your little revolution in the streets or whatever is important. And it's like the woman dancing on TikTok.
And this is like why I think Joe Biden specifically is because you mentioned the shirt, you mentioned all the other things he's talking about, and how just sort of centrist liberals feel about protests and stuff. Is I think that the fascist style repression we're going to see during his administration is specifically going to be ideological, because his campaign ads are already saying communists and anarchists need to be destroyed. He's got shirts that say, "Oh, we don't like socialism." Like he's sort of a core commitment. Even like Trump is terrible. I don't want to have to say that, but I will to clarify what I'm about to say, which is, his election was a fuck you to the status quo, regardless of whether or not it was a useful or good fuck you. Joe Biden, if he gets elected, is not just a commitment to the status quo. It's an ideological commitment to everything that America has done and will do in the name of capitalism and destruction. It's saying that all of these other ideologies that any reasonable American can hold, anyone in this country can hold, is not acceptable and must be repressed in some way. And I think we're going to, if we're doing the last century point by point again, we're going to have to start like communist purges again. We're going to have to start a bunch of shit again.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't either at this point.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't put anything past Joe Biden after he talked about fucking cyberpunk ass fingerprint locked guns.
Oh my God, really?
Y'all even remember that? That was at a debate. That was at a debate, and I feel like people have already forgotten this. I feel like all I do is remind people what actually happened throughout history. Because like today, I was also reminding people that George Bush talked about suspending elections at the end of 2004 and 2008, which might be suspending elections might be the topic that we close on. I just want to point out, so you're saying we're going to live in Metal Gear Solid 5. We've got the Boston Dynamics robots. We're going to have the fingerprint guns. We're going to live in that world. He can actually make them for sure, but he's into it. He loves that techno-fascist wankery. And like that's what we're going to see under Joe Biden. You looking forward to having your fucking face scanned every time you want to go into a government building? That's Joe Biden. Yeah, I'm not kidding.
That is.
Yeah.
He likes that shit.
He's super into it.
And he's not even going to like that. This is the thing that I think makes it so important to realize that we don't necessarily know how it's going to go, is because we're entering a new weird world where it's not like they're not going to nationalize the face scanning government building technology. That's going to be provided by a private corporation who retains and uses all that data on its own. And I don't want this to be a whole separate tangent unless everyone's interested necessarily. But the idea is that, like, I think you mentioned Bloomberg earlier. I think that the thing about Bloomberg is he was about 10 years too early. Like, what we're ramping up to is basically a world in which the government becomes so hollowed out and unable to do anything, a large corporation will basically be our disaster response in a way that like they fucked it up. They could have done it during COVID. They didn't. At some point, some head of a major corporation is going to realize I can run for president because I control almost all of the distribution and social assistance mechanisms in the country. And by doing so, they can then basically create goodwill for 5 or 10 years instead of the government, at which point they will become the government. And I think that that's our final transition into like full collapse of the Soviet Union oligarchy, is the point at which those two things fuse. And I think that that's where that's going. I think Bloomberg didn't know what to do and was too early and had no goodwill, but I think that's going to happen. And I think that if we don't stop it, and Joe Biden is the person who's going to facilitate that transition by basically making sure that everything the government does in the name of more repression and more tracking and more data aggregation to keep the populace repressed is going to be done by private companies, not by the government.
I think
Also-
that's pretty
Go ahead.
plausible and pretty distressingly plausible. I had a point. It's gone now. If it comes back to me, I'll say it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so messed up.
wanna-
And when we're talking on the point of like legitimizing things too, and like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and like what they're going to legitimize, one thing, like, I don't know if y'all like remember back in the past when we were still having the primaries to
Yeah.
see who our presidential candidate would be. There was a lot of talk of like a president and vice presidential pick that would be able to like hold Trump and Pence to task in debates and stuff, and like actually like show that their ideas are wrong. This is a ticket that cannot do that.
No.
And like when Harris debates Pence, come on, think about it. Like she's gonna be like glad handing the shit out of him. She'll maybe like attack him like once or something, but it'll just be like a very showy, dramatic id poll thing, and it won't be real. And then for the rest of it, she'll just be like, I agree, hard on crime. Yep.
Right. The Pelosification of the entire resistance now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally just going to be like Kamala Harris ripping a sheet of paper in half in front of Trump, and everyone's going to be
Right.
like, look, a strong black woman did it. And it's like, but we have to stop him.
And people will, dress up as Kamala Harris for Halloween and not
no.
realize it's racist. And it's going to be great. It's going to be so fucking great. I'm going to be feeling absolutely nothing still because I'm unable to feel things anymore. You know what I would do if I were the Democrats, though, frankly, because I don't actually think Biden can win. I would be trying.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm with you.
Yeah, I would be trying to just not have an election, frankly. I would be doing everything in my power if I were the DNC to delay or cancel the election altogether.
I say they might be in league with Trump then at that point.
Yeah,
And
let's
together.
talk about will there even be an election, because I think that's an important thing. As I mentioned earlier, George Bush, a lot of people don't remember this now, but George Bush tried in both 2004 and 2008, not really to suspend the election, but to test the waters, is what I'm going to say. Like, I wouldn't say that he sincerely like put a lot of effort into suspending the election, but he definitely tested the waters of both 2004 and 2008. And a lot of people don't remember this.
I don't remember this.
Which is unfortunate because it very much happened. 2004, especially, he was very sincere about suspending the election because of the war.
Right.
And it didn't matter anyway because the Democrats were completely incompetent. But he did talk about these suspensions, and there's a few ways that they could be done. And one of the distressing things that I've seen is a lot of people, when they talk about this subject, are like, well, it would require congressional approval. That's only if he does it one particular way. There are other authorizations that are already signed into law that could allow him to do this. And this is ignoring the fact that a coup is by nature illegal, and like he's not going to care when he does it if it's legal or not. But just for the record, there are legal precedents to suspend the election that do not require congressional or Senate approval. They've never been tried, and they're a little vague and weird, but they're out there. And a lot of them were created by George W. Bush's administration specifically so they could be used later, in my opinion. And they involve things like the Emergency Powers Act, War Powers Act, stuff like that. So At this point, I think there will probably be an election. Don't get me wrong. But I think that we should all be thinking about this. Like, I don't think that we should be like acting like this is a joke, that this is like a way out there idea, that this could never happen here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I see way too much of that talk going on.
Well,
Of like, this won't happen here. This can happen anywhere, and it can definitely happen here. And we have all of the right factors. Go ahead.
I mean, yeah. Like, what are libs gonna do if Trump pulls some shit like that? Like, these are the same people who have been, yelling about leftists physically fighting back when cops attack them and saying that like riots are never justified. Like, do you really think even for a second that those same people are gonna be like, oh, time to pick up arms? Like, no, they're not gonna do anything. They're gonna just roll with it. And honestly, it's mostly not even gonna affect them.
Yeah. Fuck, what was I gonna say? It was the thing.
The thing is people always expect this stuff
Lost
to be
it.
really overt, like it's a movie.
Oh,
or
I
something.
remember.
I mean,
Go
it
ahead.
is that overt, though. Like,
Well,
if
no,
it was
it is
really,
over-
people
I'll
would
get
be
back
mad
to
about
my
it being
point in a second.
ham-fisted. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's just
go ahead, Charlie.
to both of those points. It's overt in the sense that as soon as it happens, it's going to be like, oh shit, it's over, it happened. Like, there is a tipping point where the slow roll speeds up it accelerates to a point where it just keeps happening, and it just makes it really obvious. So I don't think they're going to, like you said, do anything at that point. The real trick here is, you mentioned like the George W. Bush stuff they did in that administration. Like, this is what the right wing has been concertedly working on for 50, 70 years now. Like, one of the reasons we can get all conspiracy brained about shit like 9/11 is because when 9/11 rolled around, they just so happened to have a whole bunch of like laws and powers they just pulled out of their ass, pre-made, like 500-page laws to just pass all of a sudden. And then people go like, oh, maybe the government did 9/11. And it's like, no, I think they've just been trying for 100 years now, or whatever, 50 years, to concertedly make sure these laws and things are understood, so that when crises happen, they immediately pass them. In the same way that, like, now during the pandemic, Democrats and conservatives are working together to pass like water privatization, to make sure that every city, when it goes bankrupt from COVID, has to sell off all of its water to private corporations. Like, I'm pretty sure Tammy Duckworth was spearheading that one, actually. But there's a whole bunch of this shit going on where it's like, they've got all these laws written, they've got all these things written. You're talking about the George W. Bush thing, where they just have a law that just includes in it a possibility under the most dire circumstances of postponing or canceling elections or something. And like, right, they've been waiting for a moment to use it. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, we're going to they don't have all these behind the scenes machinations. They just look at the system, figure out where they can break it, and then as soon as they are given the opportunity because of a crisis, of which they will be provided one because of capitalism and living under a system of constant crisis, and then they will do that, and they're just going to keep doing that. And what we have on the other side is a bunch of Democrats who are basically like, oh, we don't want to fix the procedures, we just want tiny little tweaks to them to change things, even though every single tweak that they do is literally like, well, yeah, we kind of passed the law where we fund the secret police, and we passed the law where you can postpone the elections, and we passed the law where you can spy on anyone and collect their data and sell it literally as a product to the government to provide, I don't know, more military funding. What do we tweak about that? And it's like, I don't know. You shouldn't have fucking passed it, because ultimately they don't care. Like you said, they're not going to be affected by any of this.
Yeah, it's all hypothetical to them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think the last thing I really want to say in particular is just that I think a lot of times people imagine stuff like a coup or like election fraud or any of that kind of stuff is going to be like an action movie. That like a coup is when, the soldiers storm into the White House and put guns to the president's head, and one of them says, hey, I'm the president now. Like that's not real life. And a great example to look at right now in terms of like imagining what a coup of our democracy might look like is Bolivia. Because Bolivia, they're like, oh, our election's invalid. Here we set up an interim president because our election was invalid for reasons that we're not clear about, and nobody seems to understand, and that most of the populace don't seem to agree with. Here's our interim president. Don't worry, there will be elections soon. And now what they're doing is they're just coming up with excuses to forestall the election. And so what my concern, if Trump just said, I'm president for life, and like shot Nancy Pelosi on TV, then the libs would be like, we got to revolt. The progressives were right. Like a lot of them would instantly come around. But on the other hand, what's more likely to happen is Trump's going to say, due to the extreme nature of COVID or the riots or something, or a war that he starts right before the election, who knows? That having an election right now is not safe or reliable. He might even use the fact that all this mail-in voting, who knows? Like he has a lot of excuses he's been building up, and he's intentionally building these up. So he'll say, there could be some trouble with just trying to have the election right now with all the things that are going on. Let's have it in February. And the Democrats will be like, I can't believe this. But then 10 minutes later, they'll be like, oh, okay. And they'll be like, okay, we'll have the election in February. And then in January 30th. That just makes it
even more important to win this election. You got to vote for Joe Biden.
Got to vote for Joe Biden. And then January 30th will roll around and they'll say, wow, you guys, things are actually worse now than they were when we made this decision. We have to postpone the election again. Let's just do it this November. And like after a few years of like that, then eventually they'll just stop talking about it. And that's when it's like, oh, okay, now it's just a dictatorship. But it's not going to happen all at once. It's not going to be a action movie moment where Trump just takes over the presidency, declares himself president for life. It's going to be this slow process. And if you're not watching for the signs, you are going to miss them and you are going to assume that things are okay-ish.
And the thing I think we need to remember is our Constitution basically has built into it a way to kind of fudge this and fake it, because it's like, well, okay, so if the election doesn't happen, we already have the Supreme Court, who, like, for some reason people still think is a good institution or trust in any meaningful way, who gets to decide who wins if there's fraud. And if they don't do that, which they could entirely just kick that can, and then like what, Pelosi becomes president, and then they can appoint people, and then lower than that, there's another person. Like there's just this like chain of people who can just sort of undemocratically take over and then start undemocratically appointing people. And you really got to ask yourself how much you trust any of those people to do the right thing. Or to not, like, because I mean, even if elections come back next year, you know, we fail this year, things go wrong, we get some weird ass president from the House of Representatives we never heard of because that's who's next in the chain because of something, I don't know. And then we do the elections next year after like a bunch of things haven't happened, and those are also fairly fraudulent because the pandemic's not over. It's just there are lots of little subtle ways in which the libs will still keep saying, no, the system is working, this is what the Constitution says. And then what ends up happening is you can effectively blame the left. You can blame the people who are out there rioting or protesting or whatever for the reason you have to cancel the elections, because there will always be that internal lib defense of, but the system is operating as intended, and that system inherently produces freedom. So anyone who is fighting the operation of that system is producing unfreedom, and we have to stop it. And eventually that's just going to mean there isn't an election. And you can blame the people who are protesting the fact that there are multiple totally illegitimate elections, of which we've already had one if you count the primaries in every state. As I've said on stream before, the primary in Colorado was held over SurveyMonkey, except like for the who the candidates are. And then it was mail-in after that. So there were just no choices on the ballot for anyone. Because, oh, weird, nobody was allowed to be as a candidate, you know? Like, that's happened in a ton of states. And so, like, we're already at that point where there's a very high question of any legitimacy at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the primaries were legitimate in the least, and I don't think anybody should accept them. You know, obviously, I live in Georgia, and Brian Kemp is my illegitimate governor, and I have zero reason to believe that any of our elections are remotely legitimate anymore. Yeah. You know, I think that they are, in fact, comically obviously illegitimate. They're using machines that are notoriously easy to hack. I think they got hacked in like 15 minutes by a 12-year-old or something. Yeah. Like absolutely like profoundly easy to cheat. They do not give you like a paper record. You know, there's nothing. You
Yeah.
put your numbers in, you push the button, and you hope that somebody is actually counting it. And as far as I can tell, they aren't.
Right. Yeah. 'cause in
And you know, if you are in a position right now where you're like, well, oh, fuck, I hadn't thought about any of this. Like, what do I do? I'm going to say a thing I've been saying a lot of lately because I think it's really fucking important. Grow food, organize. If you are in an apartment, organize a tenants union. If you manage to still have a job right now, organize your coworkers and have a union.
Yeah,
You know,
I know some people
set
doing that.
up-
Very
Involved
good.
with rent relief.
yeah, get involved with rent relief, get involved with homelessness relief, get involved with mutual aid. You know,
Yeah.
start tapping into those networks now because those are the networks that are actually going to be keeping people alive moving forward, not the
Yeah.
government. The government's not going to do anything to help you.
No.
Full stop. Anyway, I don't feel
Yeah,
anything
I
anymore
think
though, so it's fine.
That's a perfect place to end this. The government's not coming to help you, but we are here for you at Not Safe for Wonks, and we believe in mutual aid, and we want to help you get involved with mutual aid stuff. So if you're trying to figure out how do I do this, how do I become an activist organizer type person, how do I do mutual aid, how do I get involved with a rent relief organization, especially because a lot of people hear things like, oh, rent relief organization, they think, well, I can't help if I don't have money. That's not true. So, you know, if you're looking for ways to get involved in organizing, DM us on Twitter or ping us, you know, just like hit us up, join our Discord. If you're in Atlanta, check out Metro Atlanta DSA. If you're somewhere else, check out a different organization. Bye.